break the rule, and then you click on master. Those frameworks are shoe. They teach you what kind of the rule is. How do you do this? They shouldn't be the thing that you're doing 7 years and down the line. You're still just using that framework. You should adapt it and use it for your own context so that you can benefit and build on it. Okay? That's really the goal of those frameworks. Let's go to Wave 3, Business Agility. This may be one that's less familiar with for folks, but let's go through it, right? So ING Netherlands is probably the most famous example of this business agility, right? So just by a show of hands, how many have ever heard of the ING Netherlands Agile Transformation? 3, 4, 5. Okay, small number of you. So this is probably one of the leading examples of this. What they did is you can see the Spotify method up here basically, where they have squads and tribes. I'm sure many of you have seen this before, but they did it across their entire bank. So they started in technology, but then they took it to they reorganized and restructured their whole company. In fact, they said, you know what? If you are somebody who doesn't want to be involved in our Agile transformation, we're going to give you the option to go to another company if you want, because we're going to change the whole company. And I think there was quite a number of people who did decide to leave when they started. But they've continued. They've been doing this for several years now. So definitely in business agility, they are definitely kind of a leading example of this. You can also see, I think I have a few more examples, but ANZ Bank, and I think actually maybe SCB here in Thailand might be doing some of this as well at this point. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that one. Okay, so this is what we call the shift to teal. This comes from a book from Lulu. And this is an approach that talks about how organizations have kind of been evolving, right? You used to have kind of the power, the command, just whoever's the strongest is, the leader, like a street gang. That was kind of the original kind of organizations. Then you got much more hierarchy, and, everything was based on a hierarchy, like an army or a church maybe, where everything's hierarchy-based, and there's certain people in certain positions, and that's the way that it works. And then the third kind of evolution, they call it orange, is the idea of what we see in most multinational banks, investment banks, multinationals, right? They call it meritocracy. It's carrot and stick. They're like, hey, if you do well, we're going to give you a reward. If you don't do well, you're out of here, right? That's basically the idea. So there's some meritocracy, but a lot of times what they'll do is they'll come and bring an Agile coach. Probably see some Agile coaches here, right? They say, bring an Agile coach into our orange organization, and let's make it Agile. But the problem is the whole organization is what we call orange, right? So it is not really geared. So they say, where's your fixed scope? Where's your deadline? Why didn't you get that? Why are you changing scope? And they wonder why the Agile coaching doesn't work. It doesn't work because the organization structure as a whole is not geared towards this. So green is what many of you and we aspire to kind of an Agile, right? And he calls green basically this idea of having an evolutionary, the organization is like a family, right? So you have people, we're more understanding how everybody's kind of feeling. We're doing that. Nobody's a boss per se. We don't want anybody to say, I'm in charge. So this is the idea behind green. But he says it's a continued evolution of what we call teal. Teal is the idea here of what we call basically an evolutionary organization, where the organization is kind of like an organism itself. Everybody kind of brings their whole self into the organization. There are people who are leaders because they're good at one thing and they're good at another thing. So there are different things that make them leaders. And it's not that, I shy away from being a leader. There are leaders. It's just different leaders depending on circumstances. Okay, you might have heard of Meritocracy or Management 3.0 or some of those methods. Those are very much teal type methods that you'll see. This is Modern Agile, another one that I like. Certainly not as comprehensive in any way as the Reinventing Organizations. However, it does talk about basically some things you can use across your organization. So we've got make people awesome, deliver value continuously, make safety a prerequisite, and experiment and learn rapidly. I think my favorite is make safety a prerequisite. I remember being in a company not long ago, and there was a meeting like this. All the company was in there, everybody was in the room, and the head of that company came out, and she said, does everybody feel safe? Do you all feel safe, because I see on the feedback forms that people said that maybe we're not feeling so safe. He said, raise your hand right now if you don't feel safe. Everybody's like, okay. So she took that as, everybody feels safe because nobody said anything. Did they really feel safe? No, they were scared, right? They were scared to speak. So there was definitely not safety in that organization. So if you look at organizations like Google, at least in one of the better days, right, what they do is, even if you mess up, the idea is we go and find out what went wrong, and then how do we improve on that rather than just saying, okay, you're out of here. You messed up, you made a mistake. It's the story of one of the developers who messed up AdSense, and that's definitely what they did. They didn't get rid of them. They figured out what had happened and how to improve upon it. Let's go to Wave 4. Okay, and other methods, by the way, in Wave 3 of that, you're also, like I said, Management 3.0. You want to find reinventing organizations. You're also going to find design-centric leadership. Another one that's quite important. Now, wave 4 is digital and innovation. So digital and innovation, of course, we talked about this. This is why we're doing all this stuff, because this is happening more and more rapidly now, right? It used to be when I graduated from school, it was 2 decades ago, okay? So when I graduated from school, you could spend a year, 2 years working on a project, and that was fine. Nobody's going to say anything. Like, okay, yeah, this is an 18-month project. Let's see what happens. Now, today, at least if you go to Silicon Valley or Shenzhen or many places, and you say, hey, I'm going to spend 18 months working on a project. They'll go, next. We don't have time for you to wait 18 months to get the project. So this is not the same world that we had been in a couple of decades ago. Now, many organizations are still trying to operate that way, but unfortunately, what's going to happen is they're going to go the way of dinosaurs. You can't keep operating that way. Sooner or later, and some organizations make a good change, and some just don't. Okay? So you can see, obviously, we got fintechs and disruption, blockchain, which I really like. I'm going to talk about that. Big data and analytics, and you've got AI and cloud computing, and all these things. And sometimes you'll have somebody come running in and go, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, which is fine. But the thing is, if your organization is not adaptive from an Agile perspective, it's very hard for you to really get this stuff done, unless you're like a 5-person startup. And of course, here's more new business models, fintechs, ICOs. We'll see whatever happens for new funding models. There's a lot of different things that are coming up now. So our key is being able to respond to these, and this is wave 4. This is that digital innovation, and it's one of the key reasons that we're using these Agile methods to keep up and to keep ahead of this. Now, let's add in DevOps, because a lot of times I'll talk to people, they say, oh, well, I've got an Agile team, and I've got a DevOps team. Like, hey, are they together? They're like, nope, the DevOps team's over here, the Agile team's over here. We don't really want them messing each other up. And that is a really flawed assumption, in my opinion. Okay? So let's talk about why. This is a survey that talks about, you can see the larger numbers here in terms of who does better, teams that combine their Agile and DevOps and all these dimensions, or teams that are separate team Agile, separate team DevOps. And there's a reason for this. If you think about it, usually I do a thought exercise, okay? And the thought exercise is, I'll have you guys talk, but I don't have time for it this morning, and I'll say, okay, if you have a team that is going to develop a product, and they're a waterfall team, so it takes them a year to build their product, but they have awesome DevOps, right? They can deploy in 30 seconds, just like that, right? Now, so they've got a year to develop their product, but they've got 30 seconds to deploy. Does that 30 seconds make any difference at all after waiting a year to get the product out? I don't think it makes any difference. It makes a big difference if it's, 2 weeks to deploy versus 30 seconds to deploy, if it's like every 2 weeks you're just building an increment, right? So Agile is really what forces DevOps to be relevant. It's not just having DevOps tools. So it's kind of a misnomer to think, oh, I've got DevOps tools, therefore, we're really doing what Amazon and Netflix are doing. Not. They already had Agile tools. Okay? I'm going to switch over to the video here for a second and take a look at how Agile and DevOps
Auspicious
work together.
Agile video blog.
Yep,
this week we're going to talk about Agile and DevOps. So we hear the term DevOps a lot, and also in relation to Agile, but Hi, this is John Okoro. Welcome to this week's Auspicious Agile.
Okay, as she does that, I'll explain what you're going to see. So basically, this is one of the most popular video blogs that I've done. It talks about how Agile and DevOps work together, and because I think it's a question that a lot of people, especially the response I've had to the blog, it is a question a lot of people have. Okay.
Blog. This week we're going to talk about Agile and DevOps. So we hear the term DevOps a lot, and also in relation to Agile, but the question is, what does it mean? There's a lot of mystery around that, and it's not necessarily clear exactly how these things relate and if they work together. So let's take a look, see how Agile and DevOps work together. We always start with our user, our customer. We have some concept that we want to get into the marketplace, and we want to get that to become cash, to become value. This is the concept, the cash cycle. Now, to get that from the users to our development, people developing the product, usually technology, but could be otherwise, and through operations and operationalize, Agile gets us from the user's development. DevOps gets us from development and into operations where we have something that can actually provide value to a customer. Together, things move very quickly. Now, what is actually included in DevOps? Well, DevOps has multiple components. Here are some that you may find. There's some case studies that have some good coverage on this. This one was from the Scaled Agile website, Scaled Agile Framework. And it talks about, first of all, the source code control, strong source code control. We have automation of software automation, and we're automating software. Early and often we're testing, so we're frequently putting things through and testing them. And we're delivering in small increments, as is illustrated by the Lego bricks. Small increments of delivery. We have the ideas of continuous improvement, or in a lean or process, we would talk about that as Kaizen, continuous improvement. And we have cohesive teams, teams that are working closely together in order to produce value, in order to get product out and to the customers in the market. But wait, this probably sounds very familiar to you, especially if you are somebody who's an Agile practitioner. Why? These are actually very similar to XP and Agile engineering practices, which probably many of you have practiced and are familiar with. So in XP, we have test-driven development, or TDD, for instance. We have small releases, again, that small incremental and iterative approach that we're able to use. We have continuous integration, where we constantly are having something that's ready to build and deploy in terms of our code. We have the idea and the concept of a whole team where customers are working closely with developers, and everybody is working closely in that process of developing the product. And coding standards, where we have a set standard for our code, and that helps us to have higher quality, and we are able to develop and deliver better. There are other principles as well, but you can see how closely these parallel the principles that you have in DevOps. So XP and Agile engineering, those practices, plus the ability to not only do that, but also to operationalize, to launch this thing, to get it out to people where it's producing value, the capability to operationalize, add those two together, and with that, you get DevOps, the ability for us to develop and operationalize products and software very quickly, very fast, get them to the marketplace. Let's look back at that big picture again, and let's take a look at how all of that came together. So we have a concept. We want to get it out to cash. We have our users and development bridged with Agile, and DevOps bridges Dev and Ops together. So with that, we get concept to cash quickly. So hopefully we've demystified just a little bit what DevOps is for you today, and giving you a better concept of how these things work together and with Agile practices. So until next time, stay Agile, and thanks for listening.
So you can see that Agile and DevOps are not two completely separate things, and it's often a big problem. It's often a big problem when we try to separate them and act like these things don't touch one another. Okay? So what are some success factors for DevOps? Well, one, if you want to have Agile teams, we talked about it already in place.
Dave works for a company whose success is dependent on its ability to offer new and exciting products.
Okay, so you want to have Agile and DevOps practices already in place.
Dave is a developer who writes code for new products, new features, security updates, and bug fixes. Unfortunately, Dave needs to wait weeks for his work to be placed into production.
Back here. So first we want to have the Agile teams. They need to already be in place. You don't want to have some waterfall team and then go, oh, we got Jenkins, we got Salt, we got Ansible, we got Cucumber, we're a DevOps organization. If you're not, it still takes you 18 months to develop software. Okay? So that's not really the key goal here. Second, don't focus solely on those tools. You know the DevOps tool chain, that's really cool stuff. Everybody enjoys the tools. I spend some time playing around with that stuff myself, but the bottom line is it's not just about those tools. We'll talk about that. Have a collaborative relationship between developers and operations, because that's really one of the core aspects. I've developed for years. I remember we would all throw over the fence code to the operations people, go, oh, you guys get that working, and it would not work for them. And the idea in DevOps is let's not have that. Maybe you should be on call as well, and you should help to support it as it goes out and make sure it's working if you're a developer, or vice And don't make DevOps a new silo that's not working with existing teams. So don't go, we got this cool DevOps team, but they don't talk to anybody else. Don't bother them. They're DevOps. That's not what you want to do. Okay. Now, this really gives you an idea of how. So we start kind of in our waterfall. Everybody knows the design, code, build, test cycle, test, deploy, right? Now the next thing down in Agile, so we have more frequent iterations, right? As we get down to this idea in DevOps, what we're really talking about is actually moving to the point where we get to a continuous. Basically, we are constantly able, because our deployments, like at Netflix, like at Amazon or Facebook, you can hit that button. Even a user can hit the button, and they can deploy things almost immediately without any technical people getting involved, because everything is so automated. But that's because they already have Agile teams, they already have incremental delivery, all that's already in place. It's not just because those tools are magic, right? It's not DevOps magic, or any more than Agile magic. So what culture changes are associated with DevOps? Well, right, we talked about in the video, we've taken the barrier between developers and users, and that aspect is what we call Agile, right? It takes us, so we're working closely with users, which was a real big concept in the early days of software, that you would actually talk to your user, except for the first week of the project. Then DevOps takes us to this other wall, which is basically combining our developers and our operations. So maybe some of your operations people should be in the stand-ups with your Agile team, right? Rather than like, oh no, we don't ever talk to them. They should come in and maybe see what you guys are doing, and then maybe you should be on call and helping them support when it goes out and it's live, and making sure it's working for them. It's your organization. Another thing, more culture changes we talk about, right, is we have servant leadership. So this is something you guys know from Agile already. The idea that you lead by serving and use your leadership, your form of leadership is your service, right? Is that this is how you lead. It's not that you're just telling people what to do. We also have the idea of good communication skills. This is really going to be pretty central and pretty core for you to, just be able to talk with those other teams. You can't just be looking at your code all day and not talk to anybody, or know your tools really well but not talk to anybody. You got to talk to them and communicate with them, right? We need to go through, and we want to have empathy. We want to understand how those other teams are feeling. How's your user feeling when it goes down, throughout the morning? Or they're like, oh, you can't use it in the most busy time in the morning because we have to do some maintenance. Well, how do they feel about that, right? So empathy. And then we want to look at basically continuous improvement. This is really very key. We'll talk about this a little bit more as we look at Gene Kim's books, which are coming up here on DevOps, and some of the seminal books on DevOps. But continuous improvement is really essential to us as well. And finally here, we look at open source tools. So we all know about all of the really cool tools. One of the ones that I like, there's a periodic table of DevOps, which is by Zevia Labs. So they lay out, like in a periodic table, all the different DevOps, not all, but many of the different DevOps tools by category, continuous integration, continuous deployment, automated test tools. Really cool. You might check that out. Okay. Here's some more. There's principles that Dan Pink has here from Drive, which we talk about mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And that is very essential. It's the idea that you don't incent people by just giving, oh, here's a bonus for making your innovation. Okay, you got more money now. Aren't you happy? Isn't that enough for you? Actually, what you should be looking at is am I helping teams to have mastery of what they do? Do they have autonomy in the work they're doing? And do they have a purpose where they feel like, I really enjoy, what our overall organization is about, not just I come in and I just get through it until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, right? So measuring teams instead of individuals. A lot of times we'll see people, they'll set up like Jira or something, and they'll set up Jira, they go, oh, well, we set up Jira, and now this can really help me to measure everybody's time, how much time they take on the task, how much time are they taking on the stories. But that's not why we do it. We do it because we want to be able to get good measures and metrics of how the team is doing so they can improve. It's not so that managers can come in and go, oh, well, that guy only did 50 points this last sprint, and I can see other people did 100 points. Let's get him. That is not the reason. We want to look at the results of our team and improve them. Okay? So the tools are not a way to micromanage. Funding value streams, which means when you give the money for a project, when you give the money for a product or a value stream that would be better, when you do that, what happens is you're actually looking at like the iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, however many we're going to have, right? But that's a value stream. Okay? So they didn't just say the project is iPhone, now we're done. Project finished 10 years ago and there's no more iPhone. No, they keep making them, right? That's what we call a value stream. You keep funding as long as there's more value that can come out of that value stream. And then we talk about persistent teams. So you got your team here, our friendly Agile team with all of our different people who are supporting and shared services, and you want to keep them together. Because if you let the teams separate, you end up basically, there's what's called the Tuckman model, the forming, storming, norming, and performing, right? If you're always forming your team and they're always storming about who's doing what, because you always have somebody new on the team, then it becomes very difficult for that team to actually be able to keep going, to be able to do well together. You need to keep your teams together so they can continue to have better results. And we want to also have dashboards like this we see here. So it's a real-time dashboard. I've seen this in many different companies when they look at uptime, time to recover, are there failures, how long do deploys take, how much downtime in terms of getting things into production environments. So that's a really great indicator. And of course, Drive, I would suggest watching his 10-minute video if you haven't seen it before. It's really cool. It's a little video scribe like the ones that I do, and it just shows you the actual research behind why not just giving more money isn't enough to make people really incented and excited. Okay, so check that out. Now, Gene Kim's DevOps Handbook, he calls it the 3 ways. I definitely recommend this as well in understanding DevOps. So the DevOps Handbook, there's a course that I certify. It's an IC Agile course, and they use this DevOps Handbook as the foundation for it. It's one of the kind of the core bases. And the Phoenix Project, which is really cool, it's a novel about DevOps, right? So the Phoenix Project takes you through this company that's failing and how they use these DevOps principles, including Kanban, including Agile methods, how they use these to recover and to save their company. And it's a cool little novel. If you like a novel style, you'll enjoy this. Okay, so he talks about 3 ways: flow, feedback, and continuous improvement. So flow is the idea that you're keeping flow working through your environment, through your system, through your environments, and through your code, etc. Feedback is the idea that you don't just watch these dashboards, oh, they're pretty dashboards, but don't you get some feedback and understand what's there? And of course, the third thing is improve from it. Don't just sit there and go, oh, well, you know, we had a retrospective. I'm working with a team currently, and this team is robotic in their retrospective. So they just go through, and everybody, they have like a Kahoot. If you ever played that game, you can do this, they press the buttons on it. The users are staring at the walls. Nobody's paying any attention. They go, okay, we've got our retrospective. Nobody talks. So you need to get that continuous improvement and actually do something, right? So this is an aspect of DevOps, and if you're from an Agile space, most of you are, you already know this. This is core of Agile, right? It's using that continuous improvement. And this is what we call value stream mapping. So this is something for those of you who are into Kanban, you know value stream mapping already, or into Lean. It's the idea of looking at how things flow, how value flows in that principle of flow, and it flows through your enterprise, how value flows through your system. So when you do this, you have 3 things here. You see process time, PT. How much time is it in a particular step of the process? Lead time, LT, which is how much time are you waiting? So if it takes you, 5 minutes to do something and 10 weeks of waiting for it, that's a lot of waste, right? As we say in Kanban or Lean. So you want to see if you can evaluate and improve that. And then the third one you see here is what we call percent C over A, which may not be familiar to all of you. That is percent complete and accurate. So when something gets finished being developed, when something gets finished and gets deployed, what percentage of that has to be reworked versus how much of it is actually working the way you expected it to. And automation and DevOps tools really help to improve this because they're going to automatically test and do CI and CD from the beginning. And test automation will really help you too. Okay, so what's next? Well, I talked about that periodic table of DevOps, by the way. There's a picture of it. That's ZB Labs, just the different categories. So the DevOps tool chain. You want to implement the DevOps tool chain if you haven't already. And automated testing tools, Cucumber, Selenium, JUnit, whatever your favorite tools are. But remember, those are not the only focus. They're just part of the picture. And then we want process improvement, right? So, and collaboration. In that Phoenix project book, you're going to see they use Kanban. They use it to facilitate the flow of work through everything. And you want to have that same kind of improvement of process in the way that people are working so that it's not just a one-time kind of, oh, we got DevOps tools, but you're constantly improving. And then there's a culture change, right? So collaborate, talk to one another. Don't just throw things over the wall to developers or ignore the users because, you already got the requirement. All of that, even the leaders should definitely be involved and you have this collaboration. So that culture change is really core. DevOps and Agile, of course. And Agile teams, if you don't already have them, like I said, you will get nominal, if any, benefit from DevOps. I mean, all you can really do is deploy really quick with test environment. But that's not going to change the overall value delivered to your users unless you actually have Agile teams in place. Okay? So you'll also notice you're safe. Here is disciplined Agile, and you'll see a number of Agile scaling approaches now incorporate DevOps into them because this makes sense. At enterprise level, especially, you may be able to get away with this if you have a single team. Maybe you don't need all the DevOps tools, and you're like, hey, we just deploy. I just talk to Joe over there, and he knows what to do, and she knows what to do, and we just do it. But if you start having 20 teams, or you start having 15 teams, and those teams aren't always sitting next to each other, because that doesn't always happen, right? At this point, you need to really have this DevOps integrated. You need to have green builds and continuous integration, CI/CD, continuous exploration. All these things need to be built into your overall enterprise Agile approach. So if you're using one of these frameworks, it's built in there. If you're building it yourself, like we did when I was at Disney, well, you're going to put work in to make sure you actually integrate Agile and DevOps together in the enterprise. Okay? This is a book that I recently released with co-authors about distributed teams. We cover DevOps, tools, etc. You can check it out on Amazon. And this one, really, we talk about how teams, even though people ideally say everybody's in one room, that's co-located, they're one facility, that's not usually true, okay? Especially when you get the large scale, the second wave, the third wave of Agile, it's not going to be the case that you're all sitting in one room. Some people may be in Bangkok, some people may be in the US, some people may be in India, some people may be in Singapore, right? Your teams are all over the world. So you have to be able to collaborate around them. So that's what we talk about here. Enjoy that. And these are just some classes that we have coming up. If you have to be in Singapore, you can check those out. We're doing a DevOps Scaled Agile certification on DevOps. It's coming up in January. And we also have a talk about the 4 waves. I think you guys already got that. Okay? This is just a little bit about our company and what we've been doing and our practice in the Agile space as well. And this is my contact information. So if you have questions, you want to chat, I'll be here throughout the conference and happy to talk about the different ways. But hopefully you guys got something out. I don't know if I have time for any questions, but please do reach out to me on social media or here at the conference. And thanks a lot. We have time for questions, or are we at the end of our time box? Okay, are there any questions? Okay. I will see everybody outside. Thank you.
John.
Oh.
We would like to thank you for coming, for sharing, and listening to us. So this is something that for us. So you can pick up and